Today I'm going to demonstrate a distortion test on an old Pioneer SX-1080. This is a unit that I bought new in high school in 1978. With all the money I had, I paid $600 if I recall for this, and then it promptly went on sale about a month or two later for $450. And that was back before the days of going back and trying to claim refund status or whatever. So I didn't feel too good about it at the time. I bought that from a company called Best in Virginia. Not Best Buy, but there was an old company called Best. Anyway, I had the good sense not to take this to college with me. Otherwise, it wouldn't look like it does right now, I'm sure. It would probably have beer stains and who knows what else all on the cabinet. But I left this at home when I went off to school, and it stayed in my parents' home for a good while, and I brought it down at some point. But in any case, it's now 39 years old. It's never had anything done to it. I've never recapped this unit. I hadn't even had the cover off of it. And because of that, it does suffer from noise in the switches. In fact, before I did this test, I have to monkey around, switch between FM and auxiliary, tape monitor on and off, have to do a number of things before it'll be clean. And I can get a clean signal for this test. So it's at the point where at the very least it needs some deoxit, but it's never had anything replaced up to this point, knock on wood. Let's see. So the unit is spec'd at 0.05% harmonic distortion, and I haven't seen this in the actual specification, but I presume that's at 1 kilohertz input at rated power into both channels. So I'm going to show the distortion at a couple of different power levels or whatever here in this demonstration. I'm using an old HP 8903 audio source and analyzer. So over here I'll supply the audio source going back to the auxiliary input of the SX-1080, and then I'm tapping off. Here's my dummy load down here, and it's just water heater elements in a big bucket of water, and I tap off of that into the floating input here of the 8903. It's nice that it has a floating input, so I don't have to end up tying one side of the speaker output to ground, which is not something I really want to do. So that's the setup. And over here, right now I'm outputting about 1 watt according to this. If I come over here and look at the AC level, it's at 2.9 volts. So you just square that, divide by 8 ohms nominally, and that gives you the wattage. This load isn't exactly 8 ohms. It's somewhere around 8.3 ohms. So you have to factor that in if you really want to figure out what wattage you have. So this is telling you that I'm getting a signal in at 1000.8 hertz is what it's measuring at 2.9 volts. And at this level here, 1 ohm, the distortion is 0.04%. And this is total distortion. This isn't just harmonic distortion. The way this box makes distortion measurements is it measures the power level at frequency, so at 1000 hertz, and then it notches that out, measures everything else, and that counts as the distortion product. So any spurious, any harmonics, any noise, in fact, factors into this measurement. So this is total distortion here, 0.04% or 0.039% total distortion. That's at roughly 1 watt output. If I crank this on up, say to around the 50 threshold, come back over here, I'm now at 0.014% total distortion. That's an AC level of 21.5 volts, more or less. And this is the right channel only. I can only measure one channel at a time with this 8903. The left channel measures similarly, At least it does if I go through enough gyrations of monkeying with switches here to make sure it's clean. But in any case, that's this is right channel only right now. If I go ahead and crank this up, this is showing on the scale here. I don't know if you can see it, but that's showing right around rated power of 120 watts. This is actually a little bit above that. It seems to be 120 watts with my 8.3 ohm load would be in the neighborhood of 31.5 volts. Right now I'm running at 33.4 volts. So this is outputting a little bit more than 120 watts. And if I come over here to the distortion, I'm measuring 0.018% distortion. So that's very good for a unit that's spec'd at 0.05. Now it deteriorates here pretty rapidly from this point forward. If I just turn the volume up one notch, you hardly see that scale move. Come back over here, I'm now at 3% distortion. This is at an AC level of 36.2 volts. So this might be, I'm guessing off the top of my head, closer to 160 watts output, even though this scale doesn't show anything like that. This is what I believe. And at that power level, I'm now getting, an appreciable amount of distortion, 3%. If I just back the volume off one click, I'm back to this 0.018% distortion. So that's very clean. One thing I can demonstrate over here, like I said, the specs are centered around 1 kilohertz signal. Obviously, you listen to more than just 1 kilohertz. So I'm going to crank this down. I don't like changing stuff while it's way up here. So if I change the frequency to 400 hertz, and I'm going to crank the power back up. So right now I'm at 33.4 volts, so that's a little bit above rated power at 400 hertz. Distortion level is still very good, actually better, 0.01%. And that's actually with no filtering in this thing. This particular unit comes with an 80 kilohertz and 30 kilohertz filter. If I kick those in, it should actually improve this, because it'll take anything above 30. Well, now for 400 hertz, it may not make a difference, but well, no, it did. So I kicked in the 30 kilohertz filter, and that reduced the total distortion to 0.008%. So this filter is attempting and is taking out anything above 30 kilohertz and removing that from the measurement. So it makes the measurement better in that case. But right now, this number I've been showing you is with no filtering at all. So it's the whole range of this particular unit's measurement capability, which is probably on up to 100 kilohertz. I don't even know what the top end of this thing's capable of doing. Oh, there it is. Well, no, the output's capable of 100 kilohertz. So I'm going to assume, well, there it is. The input is 20 hertz to 100 kilohertz. So yeah, this unit can measure all the way out to 100 kilohertz, and that's what it's doing right now. So it's still good at 400. If I take this, I'm going to take the power back down. If I change the frequency to 5 kilohertz, crank it back up. You see, that's not as good. AC level, I'm still just a little bit above rated power. And the distortion for 5 kilohertz is 0.14%. See what happens if I crank the volume down just a hair. That makes a little bit of difference, but it's still, an order of magnitude worse than it is at 1 kilohertz. Let me shake it back down, go to 10 kilohertz. Crank it back up. 10 kilohertz, I got 0.37% distortion at an AC level of 33 volts. So still a little bit above rated power. distortion at 10 kilohertz is 0.375%. And if I go back to the standard 1 kilohertz, crank this back up, I'm back to my 0.018% distortion level. So this unit's doing pretty well considering its age and that it's never had anything done to it. In fact, I'm suspicious that this thing will outperform my SX-1080 up there, which will be the next one I test. That one I did not own originally. I purchased that off of Craigslist a few years ago. Had it recapped by a fella in Texas. I love it, but I don't know that it's going to perform this well, at least in this distortion test. We shall see. Let me just do a couple of other things. I mean, nobody listens to it at this level, so if I take it back down to the 10 watt range, still great, 0.015. And again, this is distortion, total distortion and noise. So as I drop it lower and lower, at some point the noise is going to start factoring in. Now I'm down in the 1 watt range, and I'm at 0.04%. So it is deteriorating as I go lower. If I go to 0.1 or in that neighborhood, now I'm up to 0.08% distortion. So that's like I said, noise and everything else kind of factoring into it down here. And that may be where you listen to these things more often than not, is somewhere in maybe this range, the 1 watt range. Still pretty good, still pretty sporty. That's actually still within the 0.05 spec there at 1 watt rated output. So that's the old beast. We'll see what the semi-beast. We'll see what the real beast does here in a subsequent video. Thank you.